Hello everybody, my name is Estrangela and welcome to another video. Today I kind of wanted to take it easy. I wanted to do something a little simple but still held true to stuff that I love. And if you guys know anything, you guys know that I love comics, you know that I love art, you know that I love movies. And so today we're going to be actually talking about my top 10 comic book character costumes in movies and TV. Now I was going by criteria of kind of two things. Either one, a really cool, interesting take on a character's costume from a comic or from another property, or its accuracy. And in no particular order, let's begin with number one, Captain America's suit from Civil War. And Captain America's suit from Civil War, I think, is the best Captain America costume on screen thus far, with the exception of the one from the very first movie, only because it is so accurate to the comics and very bright and very colorful, and it feels like, you know, like he's proud to be wearing that costume while also being very like tough and utilitarian and tactile, and it feels like it's a real costume that a real soldier would wear, at the same time a costume that a superhero would wear. And when you see it in action in the movies, I think it's brilliant. I think it works really, really well on screen. And like I said, it's accurate to the comics, and it's a kind of a cool take on the original costume, and I think it's great. I love it. Number two is Deadpool. Now, Deadpool's costume from the movie is almost an exact rip from the comic. The belt, the kind of squares of black on the sides, and all the red, and the mask with the eyes that move and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. It's a perfect costume for a Deadpool movie because it is, again, a costume actually worn by a human being, but at the same time, it's Deadpool. It's goofy, it's garish. People know who he is from a distance because it's so, like, you know, singular and unique. But it's a brilliant costume, works great on screen. The third one, and people might disagree with me on this, is X-Men Apocalypse's Cyclops. At the end of the movie, they all kind of line up. Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Mystique, a few others. They all kind of like line up to be the X-Men. And in that scene, we get the closest thing we've ever come to an actual original comics Cyclops costume, with this cool like band that goes up the shoulder and one that goes over the chest. And honestly, I think that the costume is very, very new. It's very fresh. It's dark blue. The lines aren't like bright yellow like they are in the comics. However, I do think that it's very real. It feels like, like a costume that he could take a punch in. Like, it feels like it's padded in a positive way. I think it makes him stand out like a leader. I think that the costume has just enough of that comic accuracy while still being this very fresh idea. It actually, honestly, if it was a costume that they introduced into the comics, I wouldn't be mad. I think it looks super cool. And I just love Cyclops, and I think that his costume in that scene is just dead on. Number four is Wonder Woman's costume from Wonder Woman. Now, the reason why I'm including this one and not the one from Batman vs Superman is because there is actually a little bit of a difference. Not so much in the actual physicality or the way that it's built, but in the colors. Now, in Batman vs Superman, the whole point is that she's been kind of along for the ride for 100 plus years. So that's why the costume is kind of like, it's gritted up, it's kind of dirty, it looks like it's been worn. There's a little bit less color, like it's been faded. And that's good for that movie, but the costume from Wonder Woman is new, it's fresh, it's so good, in fact, in color and design, that they actually used that suit idea for DC Rebirth that just happened, and I'll show the pictures for that costume, but it's just right off the screen because it's such a perfect kind of blend of the things that make Wonder Woman Wonder Woman. It's very, very cool. I think it's a perfect Wonder Woman costume. Number five is Rorschach from the movie Watchmen. The movie Watchmen is actually one of my favorite movies. People really, really dislike it because of its length, and they think it's very like kind of over the top, and it's kind of one of those examples for why people dislike Zack Snyder's work more often than not. But I really love the movie because it is so faithful to that comic, both in visuals and story, and the way that it's like the actual frames look like frames from the comics and stuff like that. I think it's brilliant. The one thing that stands out really well is Rorschach's costume. And the reason why is because it has the moving mask from the comics. It moves, it shifts, it's this cool ink blot thing, and it's never once brought up in the movie why it does that, just like in the comic. They could have explained how that functions, but they don't. And so for the whole time he just has this cool moving ink blot face, and the leather jacket and the hat and the little scarf is perfect. It's like right off the panel. It's exactly what you would have expected from Rorschach in the movie. It's perfect. Number 6 is Batman's costume from Batman vs. Superman. Again, the reason why I didn't specify the Nightmare suit or the suit from Suicide Squad or the suit from the upcoming Justice League movie is because this one doesn't have any armor underneath. It doesn't have any sort of like fancy add-ons. It doesn't have goggles. It doesn't have a respirator. Nothing like that. What it does have though is it has gray spandex with a black bat, black cowl cape, and a sort of like muffed up gold utility belt. And I think that it is exactly when I remember when the first image came out of Ben Affleck's Batman for Batman vs. Superman, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the perfect Batman costume. It's like, this is exactly from the comics. It looks just like if you were to take him from the comics and put him on screen with gray spandex and a cowl that like can actually pull back, and like, it's very, very cool. And I'm kind of bummed out that they're changing it for the future Justice League movie into something that's more like darker and with armor underneath, because I feel like that's kind of ugly and kind of distracts you from it. But that original Batman vs. Superman costume is awesome. I think it's a perfect Batman costume for on screen. Now, at the beginning of this video, I did clarify that I didn't want to include costumes that aren't really costumes. However, there are character designs that go beyond just like what their skin looks like, or goes beyond just suits. And so I did want to include the Dark Knight's Two-Face as a part of this list, because I think that it is the scariest way you could have ever done Two-Face in a movie. Now, we've had Two-Face before in Batman Forever, and while that costume is fine for an animated series, it's very, you know, it stands out too much. The weird pink red thing on his face just kind of looks strange. You don't really believe that his face was burned. It really just looks like makeup. But the Dark Knight's version of Two-Face is really, really terrifying. With the ability of a little bit of makeup and some CGI, they were able to totally strip away this side of his cheek, and they made his eyeball always exposed, and his hair burned, and everything was just like scarred and burned, and it was horrifying. And it not only is it faithful to the comics in some ways, but it's kind of, you know, led the charge in terms of like how artists have then gone to draw Two-Face. A lot of them try to make him more seem like an actual horrific burn victim instead of just like, you know, pastel colors on this one side of his face. So definitely appreciate the costume, definitely appreciate the look and the take on it. So I had to put it on my list. Up to this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I haven't really been a huge fan of certain characters, including Iron Man particularly, and I think that a lot of his costumes, while cool, there's not much variation between costume to costume, and I honestly think that there's too many different costumes. Actually, I wanted to include his costume from Spider-Man Homecoming, aka the Ultimate Iron Man. So the costume for Iron Man in Spider-Man Homecoming is inspired by Ultimate Iron Man, which is from the Ultimate Universe, and that costume, I think, brings enough freshness and longevity into Iron Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, while, you know, being very faithful to the original, you know, Ultimate Iron Man look. I love the three lights, like the two on his shoulders and the one giant one on his chest, and how it only cuts to red like right underneath the chest area, and then the rest is just kind of gray. I think it stands out very well in a lineup of all the Iron Man costumes. Number 9 is Doctor Strange from his own movie, Doctor Strange. And the reason why I chose this one, I'm not actually the biggest fan of Doctor Strange the character. However, his costume in the movie is so bright and colorful and faithful to the comic. And I really, really appreciate the lengths that they went to make it seem like an actual robe. I actually was such a fan of it that after I went and saw the movie, I came home and I did some fan art because I just thought the costume was so cool. It's such a bright and colorful costume. I think they kind of set the charge for what Marvel's doing now, where they're just like unapologetically putting fully costumed comic book characters into the movies. Because I think it's a good way to evolve the Marvel Cinematic Universe to keep people interested. And I think that it wouldn't have happened if Doctor Strange wasn't so faithful and also so successive. And last, but certainly not least, Hellboy from the movie Hellboy. I remember when I first saw Hellboy, I was sitting in the back of a truck with one of my friends from my scout troop. We were on the way to go to a scouting event, and he brought his portable DVD player, and we watched Hellboy. And this wasn't something that his parents would have typically allowed, because it was sort of like, you know, it's Hellboy, it's kind of aggressive and edgy, it's R-rated, I think. I just remember seeing him in that kind of like trench coat and that kind of like just kind of wife beater tank top, with the giant gun and the giant arm and the horns. And I remember thinking in the like while watching the movie, wow, this is like really cool and really different, and like it was nothing like I'd ever seen before, especially with superhero movies at the time were like, you know, X-Men, which were all just like black leather costumes. Having a character that was so cool and menacing but also faithful to the comics was like so cool. And after seeing the movie, I like, you know, went home and I looked at Hellboy and I was like, wow, that's so good, you know. And it's really cool because, you know, there's frames in that movie that look like they're panels from a Hellboy comic, and I all the time just think about how cool that Hellboy movie costume was. Anyways, guys, that was my about top 10-ish superhero costumes in movies and TV. Now, I didn't bring up many TV costumes, however, I do want to give a shout out to the Supergirl and Superman costume from the Supergirl TV show. The season 4 Flash suit looks really awesome so far. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If they bring back the rating system, go ahead and give it 5 stars, but we all know they won't. In the comments down below, tell me about your favorite costumes from movies or TV. What kind of characters or takes on characters do you want to see on the big screen or on the small screen? And that would be it. My Twitter's gonna be flowing around here somewhere on screen. Please tweet at me at the Strange Eli and tell me about all your thoughts and opinions about stuff. And I love you guys. Subscribe, share with your friends, all that sort of nonsense. And I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.